Alright, so I'm going to be talking about drugs today, mainly the classification of drugs. So when the DEA is classifying drugs, they put them into different schedules, Schedule 1, Schedule 2, and Schedule 3. The first schedule is they have the most controlled substances on there, so all the illegal ones, and for example, heroin, LSD, MDMA, peyote, and marijuana. And they have criteria for making these a Schedule 1 drug. And so the first criteria that they use is it's a high potential for abuse, and second, if it has accepted practical medical usage. So with that being said, my claim today is marijuana is misclassified as a Schedule 1 drug, and because it fails to meet those criteria. And so my main supporting points are going to be: 1, marijuana has many practical medical applications, and 2, other FDA-approved drugs such as alcohol and opioids have just as high, if not higher, potential for abuse than marijuana does. So starting off with my first point, marijuana is used to treat the symptoms of chemotherapy, AIDS, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, and glaucoma. And more specifically, it's effective in pain relief and inhibits the growth of tumor cells. And I pull a quote from Manuel Guzman, who's a PhD professor of biochemistry and molecular biology. And he says, cannabinoids, the active component of cannabis sativa and their derivatives, exert palliative effects in cancer patients by preventing nausea, vomiting, and by stimulating appetite. So this shows that it's effective in counteracting the side effects in many diseases. The only unhealthy thing about marijuana is the smoking of it, but fortunately there are alternative methods of using marijuana. For example, there are vaporization of THC and CBD oils, which are the main 2 components of marijuana that are the healing factor. THC-infused edibles, THC pills, to name a few, but there are definitely other ways of using marijuana, so to make it a Schedule 1 drug just because the smoking of it is bad is not good reasoning. And then moving on to my second point, that other FDA-approved drugs such as alcohol and opioids have a higher potential for abuse. So both marijuana and alcohol show that they can impair driving-related functions, but alcohol has more evidence suggesting that alcohol consumption leads to a risk of collision. And I'm pulling this information from an article, The Effect of Cannabis Compared with Alcohol on Driving, and that's from the American Journal on Addictions. And so that shows, leading to the second point of that, is that drivers under the influence of alcohol are more willing to drive faster and make riskier maneuvers. And so it's basically showing that alcohol has a higher abuse when it's in place of marijuana. And the legalization of marijuana is associated with a decrease in alcohol consumption, therefore decreasing the risk of traffic fatalities. So in both Montana and Rhode Island, they did a study because both of those states have legalized marijuana for quite a bit, and they found that when it's substituted, alcohol is substituted for marijuana, there are less traffic fatalities because of the effects of marijuana complement safer driving. And my most compelling point is according to a study done by the FDA from 1997 to 2005, they compared the total deaths from marijuana and 17 other FDA-approved drugs, and they found out that when you compare the two, the deaths from marijuana are 279, and the deaths from other FDA-approved drugs are 11,687, which is a pretty staggering difference. And these 17 FDA-approved drugs are commonly prescribed in place of marijuana, so had marijuana been substituted for them, maybe many lives weren't as lost. So to conclude, marijuana has many practical medical uses and has a lower potential for abuse compared to other FDA-approved drugs.
All right, well, again, we've got a good start. I think you've got a clear proposition. I like the setup that you give, background in regard to the regulatory process. I thought it was the FDA rather than the DEA that did the classification of the drugs into the different schedules. You might want to double check on that and make sure that you've got that right and that I'm the one who's misinformed. The argument that you're presenting, I think, is previewed very effectively, giving us the criteria that you talk about. I think that that helps quite a bit. The comparison on alcohol, though, I do think is a little bit problematic because you never tell us where alcohol is in the schedule. So if we're going to use alcohol for comparative purposes, it needs to be in the schedule since that's the argument that you're making. I think your better argument is on the other drugs which you talk about, where you've got the 11,687 deaths that have been associated with the use of these other drugs. On the first point where you were talking about the potential benefits of marijuana for medical uses, you make a whole variety of claims. There's like a list of 8 or 9 things that you say marijuana can be used for. There's no evidence on any of that. The only evidence that's supplied is evidence that suggests that marijuana is a palliative treatment for people undergoing chemotherapy. So you need some information on that first point to support that conclusion. You've just got it on the one thing. Just as a technical issue, there are some forms of marijuana that have been approved for that particular purpose, which seems to acknowledge that the cannabinoids have an effect on that, in which case the classification seems to be a little bit dubious. I'm not sure if those things, the synthetic versions if they're rated something different or not. I think that would be something that would be worth looking into for your argument. Like I said, on the second point, I think that you've got a good argument here, except for the alcohol part, which you need to show is either regulated by the FDA or the DEA under the schedule. If it isn't, then I'm not sure that that's a legitimate comparison. The other argument, I think, like I said before, is, I think, more effective. The question that would exist, however, is whether or not marijuana is as effective as these other drugs that are being used and what kinds of things people are being treated for. Like if these are deaths that are associated with people having, I don't know, not to belittle somebody's pain, but, headaches or menstrual cramps or, indigestion, that sounds like it's pretty significant that we got 11,000 people dying from that sort of thing, and marijuana is much less than that. But if they are more effective drugs on more serious illnesses than marijuana is, then sometimes there's a trade-off that's going on there. I don't have any way of making that comparison with the information that I've been given here. All right, thank you.